Let me tell you something, young blood. Ain't no feast without blisters. If your hands ain't sore and your boots ain't kicking up dust, don't expect no hot plate waiting on you. Out here, the earth don't bless no lazy man. You want that belly full, that soul satisfied, then you better get real familiar with sweat, grit, and grind. See, clean hands don't build no legacy. Legacy comes with dirt under your nails and calluses thick as bark. You want the life you dream about? Then quit dreaming and start digging. Roll up them sleeves. Step into the mud and earn every single bite. Because out here, dirty hands mean a full belly. And that, partner, that's the cowboy code. What does getting your hands dirty look like in a person's creative lane?
I think in any creative field, if you can call yourself a professional or at the very least a practitioner, somebody who practices a certain skill set, whether it's photography, videography, painting, singing, whatever, you understand that it's really all about experimentation. So to answer the question, what does getting your hands dirty look like specifically? One, it depends on your industry, and it's about the never-ending cycle of experimentation. When you first start, maybe getting your hands dirty is doing a lot of research, looking at other people in your field, people that you admire, listening to how they gain inspiration, learning their techniques. So first part, so when you're new, getting your hands dirty is just learning and experimentation. And then I think from that moment on, from the first time you take something you learned or a technique you were drawn to or inspired by, and you try to make something out of that inspiration, is you doing the dirty work. Because then after you start to put things together, then maybe the dirty work is, if you're creating AI films, is finding your images and finding the best ways to prompt your software so that you get images that you like. And then it could be prompting runways so you can get the videos that you like. And then it can be color grading. And then it could be adding the music to your video or doing your edits or finding a new way or learning about 3-act structure like actual film. There's a lot of ways to get your hand dirty, but if you understand that it all comes down to experimentation, and if you're fine with experimentation, that means you're actually doing the work, which means that if you're not putting out great work now, eventually you will. And most importantly, you'll be able to speak through your work because you spent so many hours, as Will Smith says, beating on your craft.
You don't become the person you dream of by watching. You become them by working. Sweat is the seasoning on every meal worth eating. If you want to thrive in your craft, you're going to have to bleed, cry, fail, and still wake up and keep going. That ain't weakness. That's the recipe. Ain't nobody too clean to struggle. And if they are, they ain't made nothing real. So go ahead, make your hands dirty, and make your dreams real. What excuses do you run to when the process gets uncomfortable?
What do I run to? I don't know if I make excuses. At this point in my journey, I've just learned to understand that it's a learning process. I sort of cut my teeth on graphic design over 20 years ago. And I realized that it was almost like I could almost count the amount of days it took for me to reach a new level of proficiency or competence, right? Where it was like, I'll try to make a design, and some days the workflow was flowing, right? Things look great, right? I'm learning new things, creating new things. I got a new skill. But then there'll be these lulls in my learning process where I'll try to come back the next day, make something, spend hours on it, and regardless of how many hours I spend on it, it's still not looking the way I want it to look, right? It's not giving me that feel. And then I come back the next day, and with that frustration, like, yo, this ain't it, right? And then maybe by the third day, I realized, like, you know what? By the third day, I'll sort of leap that hurdle where I'm like, okay, I got it now. It just clicks into place. It's not something I do with like determination or grit. Is really just showing up and experimenting. And the more I experiment, the more I, tweak this and mess that up and bring this back and, do all those sort of like this remix of different things, eventually by like day 3, I've reached a certain goal, or I found something else that I wasn't even trying to find, but now I have another skill set by this experimentation. So I wouldn't say I make excuses. Excuses that some people may make is, the time thing. They don't have the time, or they don't have the skill, or whatever it is, shiny object syndrome, where they go from one thing to the next to the next. Maybe, if I'm talking about myself, maybe that's something I used to do, where it's like, I'll start this project, I'll hit like a creative block, and then I'll start another project, hit a creative block, and start another. But usually I'll circle back, regardless of how many shiny objects I happen to find. I'll circle back on that original project and with those skill sets that I developed from those other shiny objects. Not saying you should have shiny object syndrome, but again, it's all experimentation. So those things I learned on the other paths, right? Once I got up the beaten path of the first project, by the time I, hit project 4, put that on the back burner for a minute, come back to project 1, I've learned particular skills that I can apply to skill 1. So that's why I think it's just important to be in the room. What I mean by that is, in what you want to do, like be in the room, even if you're not 100% sure what path you should take. If you're in the room and you're experimenting, I think, if you experiment long enough and play with things in this room, you'll eventually find your path and, eventually find your voice, your creative voice.
A masterpiece don't start polished. It starts in the dirt. The grapes didn't rise clean. They rose covered in the clay of their calling. So if you think your gift gonna grow without a little grime, you fooling yourself. You gotta bleed for your brush stroke. You gotta stumble with the script. You gotta ruin a few things before you make something worth keeping. Ain't no glory without grind. So dig deep, make messes, and let your mud become your monument. Are you building your creative life for applause or to express something true?
I don't think the creative process lives or exists in a vacuum. I think you have to, when you first start to create your work, you found inspiration from somewhere. Even the people you happen to be inspired by, there was a point in their career or their journey where they were inspired by someone else, right? And the cycle repeats. So I think when you first start, I don't think it's right or wrong to come from either perspective, whether you want to create something that people really love or you want to create something that you love first. I don't think that really matters what comes first, but I do think what's important is as you start to put work out, I think it's more fun to put work out that speaks to you first. Stuff that, as you're going through your creative process, you're loving the process, even, the things you don't necessarily love to do. You understand that this is creating the final product, and the final product, the process and the final product are both enjoyable. And so I think it's important for you to love your work first. But I also think people's perspective of your work is part of the process as well. I don't want to say it's important, but it's part of the dance. Because you can't just live, your work doesn't just live in a vacuum. No director creates, a great movie just so he and his friends can watch it, right? He puts it out there so that he enjoys it, he or she enjoys the movie or the film. But it has to go out into the world at some point, not saying to be judged, but to be shared. And people have the right to connect with a piece of work or not connect with a piece of work. And that's the beauty of the dance, right? We call it creativity. But that's going back to my point, though. I do think it's important for you to love it first, because when you put stuff out there, even if people don't connect to it, you don't feel let down, or you don't feel like you're not good enough because, you didn't get 100% of people across the board to love the work, which I think is probably impossible. I'm not saying work doesn't exist where, everyone enjoys it or connects with it the same way. But for the most part, you're going to have people who connect with your work, and you're going to have people who don't connect with your work. And I think both are fine. So make sure when you put stuff out there, you're putting stuff out there in your voice so that, you can take it or leave it. You love what you do, whether people love it or hate it for that fact.
What would happen if you made creating messy and consistently your new goal?
I think because of the experimentation, one would get better. I think it would be a compound effect where it's like, all right, I'm putting my hours in, clocking in, and just by, osmosis or whatever, like you naturally get better at a skill set or at a thing, right? You become more competent. But at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily want to make creating messy work consistently, because I think you'll get better because you're learning more skill sets. But I think there is magic in like the grind and the just sort of the tussle that you have to go through as a creative. So I don't think you should run from that tussle or run from that fight or run from that frustration or the creative block, because I think through that process of you getting frustrated and you having to work around things and then eventually working over that, that through that thing or jumping that hurdle, once you get through that, that's what makes you skillful. I don't think it just, yes, because some people have the argument of quantity or quality as far as, YouTube videos, your content, whatever. And I forget who said this, but this person's answer was both. It's constantly showing up to experiment, but as you're experimenting during these experimental sessions, put work out. But if you're trying to speed through it, do you really enjoy the process? And maybe that's like the bigger question. Like if you're trying to speed through everything just to get a bunch of work out, are you really enjoying the process? Are you headed towards burnout if you continuously just put work out for the sake of getting out, because you got to post 5, 6, 7, 8 times, however many times a day? I would rather take my time and go through the frustrations going to happen regardless, but I would rather take my time, be at peace when I can, step away from the work when I need to, but show up consistently so that I'm working on the skill set, right? And I'm, working my way through this knot, untying this knot. But as I'm in these sessions, I'm making sure I'm putting my all into it and focusing and, not allowing myself to get too frustrated to where I don't want to do it, but understanding it's a process and that the longer I stay at it with this passion and this joy, that I'll eventually reach the goal that I want to meet, creatively.
Here's your action step for the day. Pick one creative task you've been putting off because it feels overwhelming or uncomfortable. Set a timer for 45 minutes and do it messy, raw, and real. No edits, no judgment, just mud and movement. And here's a resource recommendation. Read or listen to the book, The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. It's a raw, powerful guide to breaking past resistance and doing the dirty work of creating every single day.